Most people know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but they don't actually know what that really means. By the end of this chapter, you will know what that means. But as we've learned that in this class, that form follows function, we better understand the structure or the form of our mitochondria so that we can understand the processes that are going on to produce the ATP that is going to power our cells. I want you to also draw a mitochondria diagram using a large piece of paper, a whiteboard. You can actually use dry erase markers on windows or mirrors. So find somewhere in your home where you can draw this and have this up for maybe a few days as you're studying this particular chapter. We remember that mitochondria have 2 phospholipid bilayers. So for our outer membrane, we're going to start with a bean. For our inner membrane, what we need to do is draw like a folded circle. I know that that's an oxymoron. Okay, what I mean is we need to include all of these little fingers that are sticking out. Okay, each of these little folds is called a cristae. What I sometimes see students do is when they draw their inner membrane, they just kind of draw a squiggle like this. And that is not going to help you understand the structure and function of a mitochondria. So don't do that. That's wrong. Another common mistake that I see when students are drawing mitochondria is that they'll draw like this. And that's not going to help you either. So we want to make sure that our lines are not crossing and that our lines are closed, that I'm starting in the same place that I stopped. All right, so we have our outer membrane. We've add a label. It makes sense because that's the membrane that's on the outside. We have our inner membrane. And that makes sense because that's the membrane that's on the inside. We need to have a name for the space between the inner membrane and the outer membrane. So that's all of this space. Okay. So all of this, let's call it the creative name of the intermembrane space. Inter meaning between. So the intermembrane space is the space between the inner membrane and the outer membrane. Easy peasy. All right, so far our naming conventions have made sense, but let's name the space that's on the interior of the mitochondria. I call this the very middleist. That's my name for it. The real name for it is the matrix. Okay, so now we have our mitochondria diagram drawn and labeled. Now what we need to do is find ourselves some sticky notes or some small scraps of paper that we can tape up onto our diagram. We need 4 of these, and I've already gone ahead and labeled these. Each sticky note gets one of the processes in cellular respiration, so thinking of glycolysis, oxidation of pyruvate, the citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain. What we're going to do is add these labels to our diagram of where these things take place. So glycolysis actually does not even take place in the mitochondria. It takes place in the cytoplasm. Okay, so I'm just going to write cytoplasm over there so that I remember that glycolysis, the first step in cellular respiration, does not even occur in the mitochondria. The next step in cellular respiration is the oxidation of pyruvate, and this links what's going on in glycolysis with the next step. So we're going to take our food molecules, we're going to do our initial breakdown, and then they're going to get transported into the mitochondria. So I'm going to put this oxidation of pyruvate on the outer membrane so that I remember that this is actually the transport stage of cellular respiration. Okay, so my next step in cell respiration is the citric acid cycle, and this takes place in the matrix, or the very insidemost of the mitochondria. the electron transport chain, which is our last and fourth stage of cell respiration, is going to take place. The proteins that are involved in that electron transport chain are embedded in the inner membrane. So I'm going to put my label just like that. Now, as we go back through and learn all the details of each of these stages, we're going to come back and we're going to refer to this diagram. So keep this up as you're going through this video series so that you can keep the geography of cell respiration in mind as we talk about the details.